What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about how do I find bass on a new lake. What we're going to do is we're going to break into the top 10 things that I look for when I go to a new lake, no matter what the season, no matter what the weather, things I look for to help me find bass in these situations. So let's dive into it, folks. First thing that I want to look at is seasonal movements, right? Seasonal movements of bass are going to be a big predictor in how I'm going to fish. So if I just look at Oliver Lake here, Clearwater Lake, been there once a long time ago, right? If I'm looking for fish in the wintertime, right, we're talking cold water, I am looking for steep break lines and stable winter holding flats. Now, Oliver Lake's got a max depth here of about 90 feet. So what I'm looking for here is I want to take a section of the lake and I really want to break it down. If I look at this section right here, this deep water flat right here in 40 degrees is screaming wintertime. In the wintertime, fish will hover in areas like this and suspend. Now, as winter transitions into spring, those fish are going to pull out of suspension here in the middle and they're going to move to these edges. Now, depending on where you're at in the country, we're in northern Indiana here, that could happen early or later in the springtime. As soon as the ice comes off the lake, I'm thinking those fish are transitioning out of the deep up to these break lines. Now, these break lines act like roads, if you will, or game trails in hunting. What these break lines are going to do is they are going to funnel fish towards spawning grounds, because ultimately as the water is warming up from the 30s to the 40s to the 50s, it's going to push fish into these backwater areas or these channels to spawn. So if I come out and the water's in the mid 40s, I'm going to start on these break lines and I'm going to work my way back, right? If I come out after the spawn, right, I'm going to look at where these fish would spawn, right? In these things, protected little pockets from the north wind over here. This could be a good spawning flat right here. I'm going to then work backwards. I'm going to start back in these places. I'm going to look for spawning fish, or I'm going to look for fry gutters and work my way back out. So seasonal movements for fish, think deep to shallow, and then from shallow back to deep. Basically, you have a 50-50 shot at finding fish shallow or deep. And we say that because some fish will pull out deep to these points, right? Points and these break lines, these indentions and cuts will all hold fish all summer. Some fish move deep. Some fish will stay shallow. We're talking boat docks. We're talking cover weed beds, lily pad stems, all kinds of things, right? But generally, seasonal movements, bass are deep in cold water. They're shallow in the spring, then they move back out to that in-between during the post-spawn. In the fall, what you want to look for are pockets, right? Here's a fantastic example of when a fish is, or where a fish is going to hold in the fall. In the fall, fish will push bait fish, bluegill, things like that, up into these flats right here, and they will pin them in there. Here's a great fall spot right here. You're talking a steep hole where bass will push bait fish up here onto these flats right here, and they will feed up aggressively. The more pocketed areas you can find, the better. And what this is going to allow me to do is simply understand what area of the lake I'm looking at and what area of the lake I need to be searching for fish, right? So deep water in the summer and in the winter, they push into shallow water along those break lines at other times, and what you get is a seasonal pattern that you can rely on. Next thing I'm going to do before I go to a new lake is go onto Google Earth and check out what I'm looking for based on what I see. Now, if I go to Oliver Lake here, I'm seeing automatically that we have some pretty nice water clarity here. And what that tells me, and what it allows me to do, is find structure and to find cover. Now, structure is literally these lines on the map right here. Think of structure as like a roadway that fish are going to follow. So right here, I see all of this break line right here. This is structure. Now, fish use structure like a highway. They travel up and down it looking for food, following seasonal patterns. Cover is anything that they can hide on that structure. So right here, it looks like on this point, we have a vein of rock and weeds. If I know that this is there before I get to the lake, a great first place to look is the cover on this structure, right? I know there's going to be fish up and down this rock weed line. Same thing over here. We have a big expansive flat, right? And right here, this is a pretty much mundane area. Now you can see rocks scattered through the flat. I know that in a clear water lake, these rocks are going to hold fish like magnets. So wherever there are more rocks, I'm more likely to find active fish feeding, right? Same thing. I'm looking for anything different. Now, one thing that I really like, docks, especially on lakes with clear water, docks that touch deeper water are like magnets, right? So I know if fish are shallow, I can find fish under these docks. And what that allows me to do here is to eliminate a ton of water in my search. I know if it's early spring, fish are going to be up here pulled onto these flats, tied to things that allow them to ambush prey, right? So as I just look and get a feel for the lake, here we got another point with a ton of structure on it. We got some logs, maybe rocks out here. We got, a transition into these grass flats and weed beds over here. That's going to be nice. We've got a nice deep hole right here. It cuts through to another lake. Now, I can definitely see a clarity change from this lake to that lake. In the cold water, sometimes fish are going to bite better in off-colored water. And I know that off-colored water warms up faster, right? So structure and cover are a big deal, along with the next thing we're looking for, water clarity, right? That's going to let me know a lot. Water clarity of different lakes will tell me a ton. Think of water clarity on a lake as simply being a way in which bass are going to feed. In a dingy, off-colored lake, bass are going to be tight to structure, they're going to be tight in that cover, and they're going to want to ambush things that swim by. In a clear water body of water, fish are going to be primarily sight feeders. So I know that on Oliver Lake here, we're primarily looking at a sight reaction bite. On its sister lake over here, Olin Lake, it's an off-colored body of water. I know that fish are going to be far more cover-oriented, right? I see some logs in the water up here. This is a great spot. We've got some shoreline brush in the water here. That's a great spot to find fish. Look at this, down trees everywhere. What I know here, when I get to this body of water, I have an idea for what I want to fish and where I want to fish it. Great spot right here in the spring or the fall. You have timber in the water and logs in the water that are leading back into a spawning pocket, right? These are fish magnets. These are things that I can eliminate and know that's a good place to find fish before I ever get to the lake, right? Google Earth is an awesome thing. Now, we have even darker colored water over here in Martin Lake. I know that fish are going to be sucked onto these docks a lot tighter than anywhere else, right? So this just allows me to eliminate a ton of water and use that structure and cover to my advantage. Also to determine watercolor before I get to a lake, because watercolor is going to determine fish location, right? So the first three things that I want to look at before I even get to a lake are seasonal movements. That's going to tell me where I need to be looking, followed by what kind of structure and cover is available in the lakes, what are likely areas that I could find fish, and finally, general overall water clarity and color will tell me a lot about how I'm going to find those fish and what mood they're going to be in. Boom. Look at that bad boy.